Oh my gosh. It's a great house.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It was funny, we were talking about the other day, there's a girl I know in Austin called Brandy. When I met her the first time I came to Austin,
Yeah.
it was about 6.5, 7 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, episode 10 with Lynn Albrecht.
Holy cow. Okay.
First time I came to Austin.
Wow.
And so I turn up, I'm staying in this little shitty hotel that like all I could afford. And
Yeah.
I got my little bag where I've got my Zoom and my mics. I'm setting everything up.
Yeah.
And then I'm editing it in the evening and then flying to the next place and just doing everything as cheap as I can. And she was just saying the other night when she came, and she's like, it's been so fun to watch it grow, because she said the first few times you came back, you gradually had nicer hotels, and then you had a camera guy and you moved into like studios, and now she says you've got like a house with a pool.
I feel like that's part of the fun part about being in Bitcoin, though, is you do get to see people kind of like glow up or whatever, like start from like bootstrap to something more successful. It's like fun.
Yeah, it's I was just going through all the things we do. I mean, I know you've got your conference as well.
Yeah, I forget about that. I forget about what I've done, but yeah, I do have a conference. Yeah.
So it started with a podcast, and we made some films. Now I own a football team.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
The football team stuff's so fun, though. I mean, I feel like that's another great example of something that you're like bootstrapping up, though, right?
Totally.
Because like I'm guessing you're aiming to, not aiming, but you started with a non-premier team, right? Like the way that
tier 10.
Okay, right. This is like the bottom, right?
Yeah, pretty much tier 10 for our men's team started in tier 10, which is pretty much the bottom, and our ladies tier 5, which is
not quite bottom.
6 is bottom.
Okay,
yeah,
not quite bottom. But I mean, I think it's just kind of one of those fun things that you're just like, you're starting from the bottom and seeing how far you can go. Like, why not?
Like if you manage to put a bit of money away, whether it's with the podcast or the work you do, if you keep some in Bitcoin, every 4 years it opens up the things you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the same play works for the football team, in that we're keeping Bitcoin in the treasury, and then if we don't spend it every 4 years, we get this boost that other people don't get.
You just don't get it.
Yeah. But we've got
it's
a podcast, football team, 2 football teams. Actually, 60 football teams because we've got kids as well. Yeah. Conference, which I'll talk to you about.
Right? That's right. You guys just did the first.
Yeah, did our first one.
Is it called Cheat Code?
Yeah, Cheat Code.
Okay, that's it. Yeah. In UK.
Then
I'm sorry I couldn't make it to that one.
Come next year.
Yeah, I have to.
We're opening a cafe. I've got a bar.
Hell yeah, let's go.
Maybe a pizza shop.
Oh, right. Nice. Pizza, that's not very... It's a little, I mean, it's very Bitcoin in one sense, but there's a lot of carbs in there. I don't know.
Well, I mean, look at me. I clearly have the carbs. We've even got my son, because my son's involved now, and he's leading a couple of projects. We're doing a clothing label.
Awesome.
To go alongside the football team, and we're about to invest in a rapper.
No way. Okay.
To get his career, to like boost his career. So all these.
That's fun.
It's got. And I launched a fund.
Oh,
called the Bedford Future Fund, to give money to we put £51,000 in, and we've done 2 grants to like a swimmer and a racing car driver. But it goes from you go from being broke to having money to do businesses to philanthropy. I feel like they're the steps.
Yeah.
And so we're now in the philanthropy stage. But look, you've I mean, how long have you been in Bitcoin?
I got in 2018.
Okay, so you've been busy.
I've been busy. Yeah, I've been busy. I've been working on, it's funny. I feel like I'm a little forgetful, and that's actually kind of useful because it keeps your stress levels down, if that makes sense. You just kind of forget all the things you're supposed to be doing at this moment. And so you can just kind of like chill out, because it's like you're not stressed about all the stuff you're supposed to be doing. Yeah, I do. I mean, I worked on Lightning for a long time. I was at Blockstream. I do work on Blockstream stuff once a week now. So I'm still kind of trying to stay involved. I went on a sabbatical about a year and a half ago now from CoreLN. So I was like on the CoreLN team for almost 5 years. And then I started running conferences for developers called Bitcoin Plus. Did our very first one in Austin just under 2 years ago.
Yeah, I heard very good things about this year as well.
Yeah, this was our 3rd one in Austin. We just did it a few weeks ago. I think it was the best one we've done yet, but they're all great.
How many people?
It was just under 200.
And how stressful?
It's stressful. It felt stressful.
Conferences are, I think, the most stressful thing we do. I don't know about you. I mean, first one we put on in Bedford, we're like, look, if we can get 400 or 500 people, great.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's a big room. So if you don't fill the room, it would look empty.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, all you need to do is like get the speakers in, organize like some stage stuff and feed people. And then suddenly it becomes this huge list. And I don't know about yours, but up until the final day, everything felt like it was going wrong.
Yeah.
And then on the day, everything went right.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's really, you pull it out of the hat. It's a little bit like a magician trick, you know? You're just like, oh, okay, everything's fine. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've done 6 conferences through 4 different countries.
Wow.
3 different continents in the last less than 2 years. And I don't know. I mean, they're all small. They're all about 200 people most. I don't know. It doesn't, like, friends help out. And like, I get super stressed the 2 months ahead of time, like the last 6 weeks before it. I'm like, no one talk to me. People are like, Lisa, can you look at this thing? I'm like, theoretically, yes. Like practically, no. My brain just like can't handle having one more thing to do right now. I don't know. It always seems to work out. Like this year we had a lot more volunteers than I think I've normally had. I was able to like get other people to kind of take over projects, which was new. I don't know. Yeah, there's just such a great crew of people that show up for him too. And this one felt really cool because we got all the people around a certain topic and we're able to help them like get together and all talk about their perspective on it. And I feel like this was the first conference where you could feel the conversation shift pre and post conference. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm like a little biased because that's like what I'm choosing to see. But I really do feel like a lot of the conversation around covenants is like shifted post conference. Rusty Russell launched like a big new proposal with some BIPs and stuff and some code he's putting into Bitcoin Core at the conference, which was like a important, exciting thing for us. So we got to be a launching ground for that and for a project that I guess we had another big project that launched there, which was BitVMX from the Rootstock team. I don't really know as much about that one.
I just saw, sorry, I'm bringing up my phone. I'm not just being rude and ignoring you. I'm pretty sure
No
I
worries,
just saw,
yeah.
didn't Jeremy Rubin just posting about covenants that you could do it without a soft fork?
He was posting. So I did see that this morning. But I feel like this is part of, so that is moving. So what Jeremy's talking about this morning, I was trying to parse it because it's quite, he didn't do a very, I feel like the way he talked about it was very insider baseball. You either know what he's talking about or you don't. If you like read through his tweet, if that makes sense.
I clearly would have no idea what he's talking about.
I mean, right. So you pick up on no need for a soft fork is probably like the part of that that's understandable, right? Yeah. And the rest of it is like a lot of math talk. I was reading through his thread to try and parse through more of it to try and get a better understanding of it. I wouldn't say I 100% get exactly what he's doing, but I do understand that it's using zero knowledge proof stuff. So it's kind of coming out of like, there's sort of this new trend in Bitcoin or like in crypto in general, which is all the like fancy cryptographers I feel like have gotten lulled over by like the siren song of zero knowledge proof-esque encrypted computation sort of thing. So the idea is you can prove you've done a calculation but not actually have to show the work to do the calculation. And the math will say like, yes, you actually did it or no, you didn't.
Right.
Anyways, like but I feel like what he's doing or what he's talking about on the tweet is moving in that direction of let's use fancy math to do assertions about what has or has not happened.
So is this a way of achieving covenants without the soft fork? So is this because he's struggled to get it through?
I don't know. I think to me, it was like a sign that I was excited because I feel like Jeremy's got, it seems like a new, cool, interesting project, if that makes sense. And I feel like Jeremy's had this CTV thing for a long time. And he's gotten a lot of, I think like that was a great conversation starter for the covenants, like larger conversation that started after that. Like I feel like he really kicked off that whole conversation of how should we get covenants into Bitcoin.
Hold on, can we go back a step? Last question.
Sure.
Sorry. So if it's not in a soft fork,
it
means it's not happening on the protocol level. This is happening at where would this exist?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think what that means is that we don't have to update anyone's Bitcoin Core software.
Okay.
What people can do is they can take existing Bitcoin transactions and write into the Bitcoin transactions kind of like new scripts, like new assertions, but they don't need anyone to change the Bitcoin Core software that they're running. It'll all just work.
And will that require work on the wallet?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you wanted to send money to that script or that address, the wallet's going to need to know how to parse that or understand it, or how to like spend those coins, if that makes sense. So yeah, there's definitely, anytime that people come up with new scripts, for the most part, and this is like kind of I went on a rant about this a while ago.
Rant.
Yeah, I was like ranting about wallet stuff. I felt a little embarrassed. Oh, it was on like the Meme Factory. Anyways, I was like, is that the right audience to be ranting about how wallets work? I'm not sure. But yeah, every time you add new script stuff or new fancy scripts in Bitcoin, you kind of need wallets that understand it. And that, like, the landscape of wallet understanding this, I would say it always makes me a little sad, because I feel like there's a lot of cool capability that already exists in Bitcoin, and it's already really hard to write Bitcoin transactions or with those kinds of like restrictions in them, or like, for example, like a time lock. Like if you want to send someone Bitcoin that they can't spend for 5 years. Generally, I think most general purpose wallets aren't really set up to help you see that, if that makes sense.
Well, what does that mean in terms of a user?
Yeah, I mean, I think it means that like there's really no wallets that will let you make that kind of contract, make that kind of transaction where you can lock the Bitcoin up for 5 years. And then if someone sends you Bitcoin that's not spendable until like, you know, that 5 blocks or like 5 year blocks from now or whatever, your wallet won't help you understand that, I don't think.
So you'll just try and spend it and it won't allow you?
I'm not sure. I haven't even tried it. It's a good question, right? So yeah.
So the UX would say that what you really want is a wallet to say available Bitcoin, time lock Bitcoin, and the UTXOs to explain when that unlocks.
Yeah, and maybe I'm a little behind the times now. It has been a while since I've like done like a deep dive into exactly what, did I ever do one of those? Yeah, I make it sound like I've looked into it, but I really probably haven't. But like there's a lot of stuff you can do in script today that most consumer wallets, like most wallets where people hold Bitcoin, aren't able to show you what kind of cool, interesting like stuff is locked, your Bitcoin is locked to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So like I think the most complicated fancy thing is you can do like multi-sigs, and Sparrow was set up to help you see that or whatever. You know, like that's like the fanciest thing I feel like that you can get access to. And this is kind of where projects like what AnchorWatch is doing with Miniscript is like, with Miniscript, you can write fancier contracts that you lock your Bitcoin to. And then Miniscript hopefully makes it more portable. So you can just have wallets that support Miniscript, and then you can have more complicated time lock contracts is basically what AnchorWatch is doing. And so you could have a Miniscript that you could then take that little Miniscript description and put it into any wallet, and then it would just magically look the same across every wallet. Yeah,
the disparity between wallets could end up being confusing for users.
It's a big problem, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, I always try and represent the normal person, because I'm not the most technically gifted, and you know, if we try and move people away from a fiat world to a Bitcoin world, you know, they first got to understand.
Well, it's the first step.
Well, it's all the first steps, and then moving from pounds and dollars, which has got a 2 decimal place denomination, to something with 8. And even last night, like, me and Kurt were in a bar. We had a drink after our day recording, and ended up chatting to these 2 girls at the bar, asking what we do. We explained. So we ended up sending them some Bitcoin. And so one of them downloaded Moon, and I forgot it defaults to the base chain address. So I sent her $20 to that. I was like, and it didn't appear straight away. I was like, oh, no, let's do Lightning. So we tap on Lightning, and I send her $5 in Lightning. And then I was like, she was like, what's the difference? I was like, oh, I've got to explain the difference between Bitcoin and Lightning. That's a lot. It's a lot. Because it's not like when you Venmo. It's like, oh, I'm gonna send you the Venmo that takes an hour, or the Venmo that's instant. Everything's instant. Yeah. So you've got to explain to people there's an 8 decimal denomination. You've got to explain to them there's 2 different ways to send it, and there's different speeds, and so there's a lot for people to understand. Yes. When you start throwing in things like time locks, and it's a lot for people to learn. It's a lot, yeah. And people don't have that much bandwidth to learn things. This is like my favorite. I mean, I spend a lot of time doing education sometimes. Not much recently, but I do run in theory like a education, like a school where I teach people about how Bitcoin protocols work. One of the things I think about— Base 58. Yeah, that's right. Base 58. One of the things that I think about a lot when I'm like
teaching people new stuff is how much can they take in at one time? Like, how much information can you give someone and still be like effective, you know? Because there's a lot of information and you only have like so much of someone's attention, right? It's different for each person how much like bandwidth they have for new information. Yeah, in a bar, it really depends, right? Like, do you have an hour to have a conversation and sit down and talk to them? Or is it 10 minutes? They just want the money and like move on, you know?
And they have to do things as well.
Yeah.
So with Bitcoin, your first thing when you say send a transaction is getting used to you send it to this long string.
Right.
And you've got to copy and paste it, probably check the last four characters. Just make sure that's a new thing. So you explain it, let them do it.
Right.
And so it's I find when new people in Bitcoin, you just have to, it's incremental steps.
Yeah.
And, and then you've got to try and get them to the idea of a hardware wallet, what that means, backing up your private key, not on a piece of paper. And then multi-sig is huge. So there's so many steps. I think it's got to be slow and incremental.
And I feel like you're bringing up another good point that I like to talk about when we talk about like Bitcoin adoption is that I really feel like Bitcoin is one of those things that you aren't going to start holding it for yourself until someone else physically shows you how, if that makes sense.
Probably,
like it's literally a person-to-person transmission thing for probably 95% of people that end up holding Bitcoin, if that makes sense.
No, it does, because otherwise it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because if you buy it on Coinbase, that's fine. I've bought $100 of Bitcoin. The idea that you need to go to a hardware wallet, you need to be told about. It's like, what do you mean I need a well, then you have to explain to them, well, if it's not your keys, it's not your Bitcoin. Okay. But if you're going to transfer across, you need to buy this wallet and this is how they work. Oh, but you don't want to just keep sending $100 because, because of fees. I mean, there's almost like a big, and actually, it's also a moving feast, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but I when I first told friends about Bitcoin, I never had to think about UTXOs and fees.
Right.
Because it's just like, the fees were always sub $1.
And it wasn't, it was just like, whatever, it's a few pennies, you just send it, it's fine. Now it's like watching the weather.
It's a steep learning curve.
Yeah, and there's a lot to it for sure, yeah. And I'm like, again, I'm convinced that like you're not going to learn how to hold Bitcoin unless someone else shows you how to do it and shows you what to use and like the first steps. And like, sure, you can learn more after that, but like you need someone almost holding your hand. I feel like the first time you send Bitcoin on chain or like maybe make a lightning payment, it's kind of scary. I don't know about you, but like.
It's still scary.
Yeah.
Do you know the feature I've always wanted from wallets? I've said about this before. And I know lots of people do this. Say I'm selling an advertising contract and it's tens of thousands and someone's pays in Bitcoin. You never just give them the address and they send the whole amount. They send a test amount. They always do.
That's right.
Let me send $10 test. I'd like a wallet to send the full amount. When you click send, it sends the $10 and at your end you say, yep, received, and it sends the rest.
Okay.
Just something like that. I tell you why, because like I remember when I've moved a large amount of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I do the test myself. And then okay, it worked. And then I go reuse the address. But in my head, I'm like, but have I fucked it up? Has something gone wrong between the test and the main one? Whereas if it does it like
an automatic replay.
Yeah, an automatic perfect.
Yeah.
Then it does it for me.
Right. And then you don't have to think about it. Like if that assurance, the same thing is happening again.
And I must have done a couple of thousand transactions since 2013. And I've never done one wrong, but I still panic.
Yeah. It's stressful.
Yeah.
Like I send Bitcoin semi-regularly for stuff, for like Bitcoin plus stuff, for paying people back. And it's just like huge amounts. But.
Would there be a way of even not doing a test send? It can ping the address and signal it's. You'd have to write a message of some kind, wouldn't it?
I mean, I think the way that it works is you would have to send the money.
You do.
To show up on the other person's wallet, yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy way to do a test ping, but I might be wrong. Sure, someone online will be like, no, Lisa, here's like 10 ways you could do like a test ping or whatever. But
well, then I want it to just pick a crappy small UTXO I've got that I don't care about losing and ping that across.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of work still to be done in the wallet space for sure. I don't know who's going to do that work, but yeah.
Look, we are early bull run stages. There's certainly a lot of new people coming into Bitcoin right now. And there's going to be people who are new to the show. And even those people are going to be listening going, what are they talking about? What do they mean, UTXOs?
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's we're really conscious of that. It's one of the reasons we want to talk to you, actually, is that we kind of wanted to do another kind of Lightning Network show. Get a little bit
More into the Lightning.
More into the Lightning.
Lightning.
Like a little bit of a kind of a basic intro, and then get into the bit of the details where we are, because it feels like Lightning itself is a moving feast. And I do want to cover covenants with you as well, particularly for a couple of reasons. Firstly, should they happen? And I did an interview with Saylor the other day, which a lot of people have talked about.
Oh, okay.
And he's talking about conservative Bitcoin development.
Okay.
Discuss it with Parker Lewis. And so it's what should we be developing, and should we be developing stuff at all, kind of thing, and what timescale. So I want to cover it all with you, but I definitely want to just go back on the Lightning Network, because it definitely feels like what people thought Lightning Network originally was, what it is now, is different.
Okay. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, in that I don't think the future of the Lightning Network is me opening lots of channels to people. It feels like the Lightning Network is almost like that HAL vision of a second layer banking infrastructure, where you have a lot of hubs doing the work for people. And the big question that I've asked for about 2 years now, and it came up with, Saylor put it, he said, I'm not sure if you can have hard money for all and sovereignty for all. Like, do you sacrifice one?
I see.
And so I've been asking the question, like, can you be self-sovereign on the Lightning Network? And there are challenges because someone else owns the UTXO.
Yeah, this is a good question. I think like can everyone be self-sovereign is like one of those tricky questions that I like to avoid. Because I feel like when you start really digging into it, it's like, I think it does get very difficult for every single person to be self-sovereign on Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I also think there's scales of sovereignty. So I might own UTXOs, but I can't validate the code or the wallets, and so I'm still trusting someone. And you might not you might only be on the Lightning Network and not have control of the UTXOs. But I'm sure you'll tell me this, but I'm sure there's things that can be constructed in a way that's very difficult to rug people. Yes. Or more difficult to rug people.
So like when you're in Lightning, if you're running your own Lightning node, or if you have like a certain set of Lightning wallets, like you do own those Bitcoin, if that makes sense, in Lightning. The UTXO is just shared. It's like a 2 of 2. It's like being in a shared checking account.
So John, let's come to this. Let's work from the start. Just so people listening understand.
Yeah.
Like, let's just do a very quick, what is the Lightning Network, so people understand.
Yeah. So I like to think about it. I think about it from this like Visa, like what is the Visa network? Maybe it's like it's a different place to start, sort of a sideways, looking like sideways attack the question. Most people don't understand how credit card networks work, right? But the general idea is it's a big decentralized computer network. And every single merchant where you want to spend your card has a little terminal that talks to this network, right? It's a big computer network, and the credit card data that you give them, like, you give them their card, that gets sent back to through some, I don't know, routing mechanism inside of the Visa network. It ends up going to your bank that issued you that card, and they ask, hey, can this person like make $100 charge? And the bank's like, yeah, we can do that, or no, we can't. And then there's actually like 2 things that happen. You swipe it and they're like, okay, so 1, you get the approval, and then 2, later, maybe a day or 2 later, the money will actually move from the person who issued the card to the person that, the merchant account, whatever. So that's like a whole banking network, right? I think there's a few things that are important to understand about Visa is that it's the only people that are allowed to join the Visa network as someone who processes payments and like participates in that network has to be a bank. So it's like a bankers cooperative digital distributed computing system. I don't know if I'm making this any easier or not. Okay. So that's like the bank's digital payment network, right? Yeah. Lightning is an attempt to make a Bitcoiner digital payment network, where a bunch of people basically set up shop and say, hey, I will route payments for you with Bitcoin. You have to pay me a small fee. But the thing about that network is it's open. You don't have to be a bank to join it. Anyone who wants to set up a Lightning node and put their own capital into it can start routing payments through the network. if that makes sense. And then a whole bunch of people now have Lightning apps on their phones, and they go to like a merchant to buy coffee who accepts Lightning. The merchant puts up like a QR code to pay Lightning. Your app scans it. You send a Lightning payment directly in Bitcoin, immediately settled. So it's not like the money moves 2 days later. The money moves immediately at the time of payment to the other person's Lightning channel. And it just happens almost instantaneously in most cases.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so my explanation to people is like,
Oh, sorry.
no. So tell you've explained what it is. When I explain it to people, they've usually done a base chain transaction.
I see.
And I
Okay.
always say, that takes about an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Lightning Network is a way for you to be able to send parts of Bitcoin really quickly.
Exactly.
But you have to transfer some of that Bitcoin into the Lightning Network to do it.
That's right.
That's why I say it's like you're essentially trading Bitcoin for Lightning sats.
You have to lock it in, kind of.
And so that's how I try and explain it.
But what's cool about so one of the projects that I've been working with a couple people in Lightning for a few years now is a splicing project. You heard about splicing?
Yes.
So the cool thing about
A long time ago, I heard about it.
Yeah, it's one of those slow rollout network things. I think it's going to take a while to get into wallets. So notably, Phoenix has it, I think. But one thing that you can do with splicing is you can have all of your money in Lightning. And then when you want to make an on-chain payment, you can easily make it seamlessly out of your Lightning channel. And so you erase this distinction between my money's in Lightning, my money's in on-chain. It all just becomes like a single balance. And you can use that balance either immediately via Lightning, or you can splice out money on-chain from the same balance.
Is that what Moon does?
No, Moon does something quite different. All of the money in your wallet. So with splicing, all your money would be in a Lightning channel already. So it's immediately available for you to send out over Lightning without any on-chain anything. It's just in Lightning. And then if you wanted to move it on-chain, it would just make an on-chain payment out of that Lightning balance. So it would cost you about the same as doing a normal on-chain payment. You wouldn't really see any big payment differences. Moon, on the other hand, keeps your entire balance on-chain. So if you want to make a Lightning payment, what you're actually doing is you're making an on-chain payment to Moon, who then makes a Lightning payment on your behalf.
Right, okay.
So that's more expensive because you're paying on-chain fees for every transaction.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think an ideal world in the long term is you only have one balance, and whenever you try to make a send, the recipient, depending on who the recipient is, the wallets decide what the best is on-chain, off-chain, and you just see a fee estimation. But I say that not knowing long-term what's going to happen with fees on the base chain.
No one knows.
It's really tricky.
No one knows. And Lightning has a whole different fee calculation, et cetera. It's by volume of sats sent instead of I don't know, on-chain have a whole different fee calculation. It doesn't matter the volume of sats you're sending. It matters the number of UTXOs you're spending.
Yeah.
Which is a whole different thing. Whereas Lightning, if you're making a really big payment on Lightning, it'll be expensive because they charge you by volume of sats you're moving.
The only thing about splicing sounds really cool. I would be nervous keeping a lot of money on Lightning, and I don't know why.
Sure.
I think probably because we were made to feel nervous at the start because it was be reckless.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, is it still reckless? If I put a whole Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, am I at risk here? I don't know my risk of being hacked. Is it different? Is it the same?
I think it's not so much of being hacked. All of your Bitcoin that you lock into Lightning channels are in 2 of 2s. They're in multi-sigs.
Yes.
You just have a counterparty there. You have the other side of the channel, so to speak. I think the thing with Lightning that people worry about is if your node goes down. So if you have an infrastructure failure and your node goes offline, you run into trouble. So you kind of when you do that, you almost add this almost IT guy level of responsibility, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you need an IT guy to make sure that server is up and running and online most of the time. The way that user wallets are kind of have this sort of close relationship usually with an IT guy. They call them LSPs, but it's kind of you've outsourced some of the IT guy to a company, and then you have a wallet and you still have the channel and the funds, but the IT guy is the other person in the channel, and there's a little bit of trust there.
Right, okay.
A little bit.
So I've run into a few problems with Lightning. Not that I'm against it, but a few problems.
Sure.
So and I think this, I'm not sure if this is down to different implementations, but I'll give you a couple of examples. Wanting to have a QR code that people just scan and keep donating to.
Yeah.
Now, I've had instances where I've done that and the QR code only works once.
Yep.
And other times where they can use it over and over again. And it's because I've done it probably from different wallets.
Yep.
But I didn't know this.
Right.
And so I'd put a QR code and people saying, I can't send. I'm like, what do you want about? Also, the original, when it was originally released, when it was, you had to send an invoice. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you had to set the amount, and I didn't want to do that. I just want to say, just send me any amount.
You can do any amount.
I know now,
but
I didn't want to send an invoice for someone to pay. I wanted someone just to be able to pay.
I see.
Do you see what I mean? Not create the invoice at the start because the amount might change.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not running into failed payments and liquidity issues. It's very rare now.
Yeah. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's exciting.
I very occasionally, like on Fountain the other day, I had. It was about, I don't know, a couple of $1,000s worth. And I had to do on theirs, I think in $500 increments. But even that was cool. Because I remember there was a time like with the Tip in Me website, you'd have to do it in like $25 increments. Like anything over, there wasn't the liquidity.
Yeah.
But there's just been some inconsistencies of functionality, which I've not had on the base chain. For the very first day, every sender's gone through. Whereas on the Lightning networks, there's just some inconsistency of when it works, doesn't it work, and inconsistency of what you're meant to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think this really gets down to like the base chain. There's like kind of like there's consensus, right? Like there's a blockchain, there's consensus. All of the nodes need to be on the same consensus and the same blockchain. Software needs to work the same because otherwise you have like weird forks or whatever. So like everything across like the base chain for the most part is largely standardized. Minus what I was talking about earlier with like there's some stuff wallets can't do or can't use that's a little frustrating. But the general use case of sending and receiving from wallets is like very standard. And you can't really like deviate from that. It's like, there's like almost like a benevolent dictator who says this is how it's going to work. And that was like Satoshi back in the day, whatever. And that's how it works. Whereas on Lightning, it's more decentralized. You have a lot more different teams with different implementations. They're all kind of doing or championing different standards for different things. And so you end up with a little more of a fracturing of what works here, what's going to work there. What's the right way to do this task that I want to do? And it's like, there's like 3 different ways you could do it. And it depends on what your wallet is, like what implementation you're running, et cetera. I feel like we're still in the process, I think, of figuring out how we're going to have like one reusable QR code. The Core Lightning team and the LDK team have really been championing the Bolt 12 stuff, which is a way of just basically you get a QR code you can just reuse endlessly. There's also like LNURL, which does stuff in a similar way, which is more widely supported, I think. Lightning addresses are built on top of that.
Okay.
So you kind of have competing standards and it's not all the same.
Would it have just made more sense to have one implementation?
One implementation on Lightning?
I know we've basically got one on the base chain. I know Luke has his knots where he strips stuff out, but essentially we have one implementation, don't we?
That's true. I mean, so I think like for Lightning, it's less important that you have one. And it's less important that there's only one because you really can have every Lightning channel. The only place that you need to have things in consensus is between 2 people. Whereas on Bitcoin, on the main chain, you need consensus globally across everyone, billions of people. So I think there were a couple of reasons that the Lightning Network was set up such that there are multiple implementations. And part of that goes back to this idea of Bitcoin being distributed peer-to-peer technology. Mm-hmm. I think the idea was that with Lightning, you really want different distributed teams who understand and know how the protocol works and are like kind of all working together to build it towards, whatever. I mean, it does make things messier because there's a lot more people and there's a lot more ideas about what the network needs in whatever direction. But I think it makes the network more resilient because now you have independent funding behind each of the protocol teams. You have independent understanding of how the protocol works scattered around the world in a bunch of different developers' brains, right? Because now 4 or 5 people or more than that have like implemented all the different parts. And so if something were to happen to one of the teams, if they were to run out of money or I don't know, get like, maybe like have a
Put in jail.
Yeah, a bus accident, I was going to say. But yeah, like
both terrible.
Yeah, something terrible happens to one of the teams. It's like the understanding of how the network works and the funding behind it is distributed enough that then makes the Lightning as a project like resilient to, I don't know, any kind of like attacks hand wave.
How does the working relationship between the different implementations work? Because I'm assuming at times there's one team working on one implementation will want another team to do something because there's something out of sync. Does it coordinate well? Yeah,
I think they coordinate fairly well. I mean, obviously the thing that gets the fastest response is usually bugs. Okay. So it's like the general goal. We have every other week there's a call, like a online face-to-face internet call where people hop on and talk about stuff, proposals on how to change the specifications, new projects that people want to add, things people are working on that they need other implementations to contribute to. So there's like regular communication. We meet up in person about every year and a half to kind of talk through stuff. So there's a lot of touch points where we come together. And then if there's bugs, et cetera, every project's an open source project on GitHub. So it's easy to post stuff to other people's, hey, we have an issue. Can you fix this? That sort of thing. So there is a lot of work and collaboration amongst the teams. I think one of the things that definitely shows up in the modern, like current implementations is everyone kind of has a different focus on what they think is the most important next thing to add to the network. Part of that is like, you can kind of see it with like the L&D team at Lightning Labs has really been focusing on getting Taproot channels out. I think mostly because they need that for their Taproot assets project. So figuring out how to get everyone to Taproot has been really high on their priority list for, I feel like, what are pretty obvious roadmap reasons. They want to be able to ship Taproot assets onto the Lightning network. In order to do that, they need Taproot channels in order to make that work. So they're working on getting Taproot channels onto Lightning. Core Lightning, I don't remember.
Just on that, so if they complete that implementation, does that mean wallets that use their implementation and wallets that don't won't be interoperable with regards to these assets?
Yeah, I think that's right. So if you're using an implementation that understands Taproot assets on both sides of the channel, it should work fine.
Yes. But if one isn't, so for example, because I don't know which, say I'm using, I don't know, Wallet of Satoshi, and that's one implementation. I send it to Mutiny, it's another, and it doesn't have it. Yeah. What will happen at the Mutiny end? They'll still receive, but it won't display it?
I have no idea. Something. This is where I think like we call this in programmer talk, like undefined behavior. Like we're not sure. Like no one, until you try it, I think the risk you run into with that sort of thing, because Taproot assets, so I like talking about protocols like the Taproot asset protocol, and there's a lot of other ones as like, they're accounting systems for assets that aren't Bitcoin, right? And it's basically keeping track of who owns what of a different kind of thing. Like it's just a different number, right? Bitcoin as a system is an accounting system. It's just numbers and who's allowed to spend it. And this is taking that chain of like keeping that data and adding a new way of keeping track of, okay, so-and-so owns like 10, I don't know, Bevo bucks or whatever. And you just write that into Bitcoin now. Like all that gets written into Bitcoin.
Okay, so this could be for stable coins. Yeah,
you could say, Jim owns 10 USD.
Great. And so if that exists on the Lightning Network, where do they actually create? Was it created?
Someone has to issue it.
Someone has to issue it, but
has to create that assertion that Jim owns 10 USD.
Yeah, because the issuance of Bitcoin comes obviously from the Coinbase reward.
Exactly, yeah.
But where's the issuance of this? This is it's a manual issuance.
I have no idea, yeah. This is where these are great questions I don't know the answer to, yeah. Someone has to create the first record that says Jim owns 10 USD, right?
Right, yeah.
And do you trust the person who says Jim? Like, what does that 10 USD mean? Like, do you think that means something to you? Do you want that? Like, if Jim can take that entry that says he owns 10 USD and send it to me, is that worth, is that entry that says he's worth 10 USD worth anything to me? You know what I mean?
Yeah, something like that. There'd have to be an entity like Tether behind saying we've backed that with real dollars.
Right. And some way that you can verify that $10 assertion that Jim says maps back to $10 that Tether says they'll back, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And that somebody else can't also go and start issuing
But I
something
think
that looks
that's
identical.
the thing with like these sorts of asset protocols is in theory, anyone can issue their own assets on it.
No, I mean, it's like if I issue 10 Pete Bucks,
Sure.
you also can't issue 10 Pete Bucks. And
I see. Yeah, that's right.
So they look different, but I mean,
I think that's right. Yeah. I think there's probably some private public key way that you get to like only your private key can issue more Pete Bucks.
yeah, I'm the only
I would
issuer.
assume. I'm making assumptions here. I don't know how it works.
Well, I've always liked the idea of using the Bitcoin network for share capital. I just don't know how it's going to be done, but issuing share capital, issuing like equity.
Oh, I see. I mean, Liquid's been doing this.
Yes.
They're like, I feel like very much on the forefront of any chain I've seen in terms of issuing equities and like, I mean, I don't know. The Blockstream mining note went out a few years ago. I don't think it's wrapped up quite yet, but that one's kind of fun because I feel like you get a dividend payout at the end of it, right? Like it's got that whole kind of equity mechanism of you buy into the asset and then it pays out.
Well, we want to do something similar on the football team at some point. We've had hundreds of people write to us say, can we buy equity in the team?
Right.
And we'd love to do it. We don't want to just do a traditional token because it's got that kind of shitcoiny feel.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it would be very cool to be able to issue a token and an equity and people can just freely buy and sell them. And I love that idea of sending Bitcoin dividends. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. But I feel like Liquid has been doing this for years or like working in that. Like that I feel like is one of the bigger markets that they're making strides into, which is how do you ship equities. So like I feel like El Salvador.
Yeah, they've got the Bitfinex exchange.
No, I mean, so El Salvador has like a hotel chain that's going to issue their next debt issuance or whatever on Liquid. And so you can buy into their note basically that way. And how that pays back, that'll all be handled on Liquid.
Okay.
There's a huge promissory note project in Mexico, which is issued, I want to say, billions of dollars worth of promissory notes on Liquid. So they're using Liquid as their like record of these notes, which are like assets. I don't know exactly how they work. Apparently they're kind of like mortgages, but not. So yeah, I think there's a lot of equity projects that are happening and like kind of securitized things that happen on Liquid, and they have tools, and I think it's been built around making sure, for example, that you're following all the regulations you would want to follow when you issue something like that.
Yeah, because you can have the technology, but what is the regulations around it? And I'm pretty sure if I tried to issue it in the UK, I wouldn't be allowed because it would have to go through some governing body.
I think that's part of what, well, maybe for the UK, but I know that so the Blockstream mining note, they went through all the work of figuring out what they would need to do to issue it have it on there. I don't know.
I'll talk to Adam.
Yeah. But yeah, so like I feel like that work is like definitely happening on Liquid. I'm sure other places and other, you could probably add it to Bitcoin somewhere, et cetera. I'm sure someone might. But yeah, it's already happening over there.
Is the general feeling with Lightning what it is now is therefore different from what people thought when it first arrived?
I feel like this really depends on what you thought you were getting when it first came out, if that makes sense.
Well, so I thought I was getting fast payments to anyone.
Right.
But I always confess things I've never done, right? I have never opened a channel to anyone. And the reason I've never opened a channel is I don't think the idea of opening channels scales. So I don't want to become, but that for me, that is a tool for the techies, the nerds, the geeks. Like they don't. So I've refused to open a channel, and I've only ever used Lightning in a custodial way because I never have more than a few $100s on there, and I'm cool with that. And that's my experience I want to have, and it's always worked for me. But I just didn't think this opening channels would be the thing that scales to billions of people. I knew it'd be abstracted away in the code, and that is happening. But I originally thought it'd just be everyone connecting to each other just to send each other Bitcoin. And now
I see.
It's like what Danny's put. It feels like the Lightning Network is now like an interoperable clearinghouse.
I mean, that's kind of what it is. This is the thing where you start. So like I got into Lightning and then I started reading about how banks work. And when knowing how Lightning works, and then you read about clearinghouses, you're like, oh, Lightning is Bitcoin clearinghouses.
Yeah.
Like it is Bitcoin clearinghouse tech. Like it is clearinghouse technology. Like we've taken the way that clearinghouses work and we've written a way that you can do that with Bitcoin.
Yes.
I feel like clearinghouses work in relationships where you have like a lot of money moving back and forth between two parties, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where it's the most like economical, so to speak, to have Lightning channels. So I feel like Lightning channels make a lot of sense if you've got like yeah, if you've got a lot of money moving back and forth between two entities, which tends to happen at kind of a more abstracted layer away from the end user, right? If you're just wanting to pay like your, I don't know, if you want to pay your like housemaid every week, you could open a Lightning channel to them, but at some point that's going to deplete out, right? Like they're probably not going to pay the money back in the other direction. You really need almost bidirectional payments happening, right? They also kind of have to be pre-funded in a way. If you're like, if you know if you're going to want to pay your maid like over 12 months, you could make one Lightning channel that pre-funds for the next 12 months, if that makes sense, and then pay her out of it every month a little bit until it depletes. Then you've paid one on-chain payment for those, but you had to allocate the capital up front, if that makes sense. Like there's a trade-off.
Yeah, it does make sense. I guess the thing is, I don't care. Right. I just want to pay her.
Right.
So at the moment, I just pay her online, and I don't care about how the banks and the infrastructure in the background works. And I think for scale, I don't care. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Yeah. You kind of just want that solved in the background. Just on the fact that some people will never touch the base chain. And so say I download a wallet and I acquire some Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. And say that channel's open, has got, I don't say 1 Bitcoin in there, and I've bought 100,000 sats. Can I be self-sovereign with that 100,000 sats because I don't own the UTXO? Yeah, essentially, I mean, somebody is almost like.
So if someone sent you 100,000 sats on Lightning, I think it depends what Lightning wallet you're using.
Right, but how do you so? For me to have that, and I've got it custodially, right? Sure. Somebody else has opened up that 202. How do I take my 100,000 out of that 202 on chain? So I can send it to an on-chain address at that point, and it becomes mine. Yeah. But at that point where I haven't, I've just got it in my Lightning wallet custodially. It's not. I can't be self-sovereign. I have to move it on chain.
I see.
Do you see? That's the question I've been running for like the last 2 years. Yeah. Like I know I can get a private key that backs up that. I can get the seed phrase that backs up that wallet. So if I lose the wallet, I can restore the fact that 100,000 sats say is mine. But it's not. It's never going to be. I'm not self-sovereign with that until I move it on chain. Am I?
Well, I mean, so when you say it's in a 2 of 2, like the idea is that one of those 2 of 2 is your key, right?
But I'm not because I've just got it. If I've got a wallet and it's so say my wallet is Satoshi wallet.
Sure. Okay.
Say you send me 100,000 sats
into a wallet of Satoshi. Yeah. They're holding it. It's in a channel they own, and they like have a little entry in their database that says Peter McCormick, 100,000 sats.
Yeah. But that's really going to be the case for everyone on the Lightning Network unless
they use wallets that make it such that like does Mutiny do it where you get your own channel? I haven't used Mutiny in a while.
But if they're opening a channel for me, does there have to be like a minimum amount of big sats I have? Because otherwise it's too expensive for them to open the channel.
That's true, yeah. So, I mean, what Mutiny started doing is they'll give you ecash tokens until you hit a certain point. Yeah. And then once you hit the certain point, they'll open the channel, and then the sats will be on your side, and you'll have one of the keys for that 2 of 2, right?
Yeah, because you're never self-sovereign with ecash again as well until you.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. See, this is the thing I've been like going through my head is like, okay, I'm fine, you're fine. Yeah, we've got UTXOs.
That's true.
We're the privileged position of being self-sovereign, but as time goes on, if you think a decade, 2 decades ahead, someone joins the Bitcoin network, they might buy $10,000 of Bitcoin. Sure. But it still won't be enough to get a UTX out. Yeah, so they're on the Lightning network, and really they're trusting someone else. So I'm kind of like thinking, well, I wonder what that infrastructure will be, because if it's this clearinghouse, essentially, I have an IOU for that Bitcoin if I don't move it on chain. How does the infrastructure build out so like I trust that and I don't get rugged? It's tricky.
I don't think that Bitcoiners have a good answer for this.
No, they haven't. That's why I keep asking it.
Yeah, I feel like this is what we keep coming back to is like, and one of the things that you run into with like ecash mints is that they're really hard to do proof of reserves on. Well, they can, they can do proof of reserves on their on-chain funds, but it's hard for them to prove how much ecash they've issued, if that makes sense. So they can prove to you that they own 1 Bitcoin as like as a bank, basically, or as an entity. But they can't prove to you that they've only issued 1 Bitcoin worth of ecash notes.
Yeah, I wonder if that can be solved at the software level. I wonder if Fedi can do that so it tracks at the point you do it.
Fedi's an interesting project because really what they've built, and I feel like this is one of those niche things that, I don't know, basically, so that Fedi kind of has a 2-tier system, right? They have I've been issued ecash and I hold it and I send it to the mint. I'm like a client of that mint, or I'm a member of the mint and I participate in making sure that, I run software and I make sure that the Bitcoin that's been given to the mint gets, sent out to people who want it, et cetera, appropriately. Like they kind of are responsible for the Bitcoin, right? Let's say there's like 5 people that are part of that collective, for example. In between the 5 of them, they basically are running I'm going to call it a blockchain, but it's a consensus protocol. It's basically a blockchain. There's like a little private 5-person blockchain that's happening that makes sure that the right amount of money exists, et cetera. So you'd basically have to have, and this is where they start talking about, you'd have to have like 3 people that defect in order to mess up that blockchain, et cetera. So, and at some level, like, I don't know if they make that blockchain public, the little chain that's running that keeps track of, and you need that so that this guy knows that when this guy pays out, this guy pays out someone's ecash tokens, this guy needs to not repay out the same ecash tokens. So you need all these people that are in the mint, the federation, to have the same view of the world, right? And so what kind of technology do we have that makes it so that everyone has the same view of the world? Well, it's like blockchain tech to some extent.
Yeah.
I might get some pushback from the Fedi team being like, here's why it's not exactly a blockchain. But it is like they're doing a distributed consensus, like, protocol basically that keeps track of what is and what isn't the view of the world for the people in that party. So it's kind of like you get a little mini blockchain now. Why don't we add more people to that little blockchain and make it a lot bigger? And so now instead of everyone being someone who holds ecash, why don't we have thousands of people at the federation level, right? And then they're all of a sudden they're on a second side chain basically, where they're in consensus with everyone else, et cetera. Would that make it better? I don't know.
The thing I really liked about the Fedi mints that was explained to me by Tony from Mutiny was the idea that eventually you might have like thousands of these mints and you can distribute your Bitcoin that you own across them all. It's a bit like with the company treasuries. They have a 250K FDIC insurance, so they distribute amongst banks.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah, so if I had like...
It's exactly the same.
I don't know, 100,000 sats, I could have 100 sats in 1,000 different mints. And like if one rugs me, I've lost that.
Sure.
100.
But how much did you have to pay on chain to distribute your funds that way, I guess? I guess the idea is like, how would you get all your money into all the different mints?
Well, because they transfer across Lightning, don't they? So once you're in...
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
So they basically have an interbank settlement network, which is Lightning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of cool. I thought that was kind of interesting. And so rather than, if we can't have everyone as sovereign, we have just distributed risk.
Sure.
Which is
do
kind
that.
of cool.
Yeah.
These are big problems.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm like, yeah, they're big problems that I'm so terrible though. I'm like, they're problems that like don't affect me. It's terrible. I'm just like, yeah, you're right. Those are problems for someone else.
Yeah.
Like,
well, why don't they affect you?
I mean, because I hold like I run my own Lightning node, right? Like I'm a self-sovereign Lightning node runner, so like I worry about problems of like Lightning at the Lightning node level, right?
Right, of course, yeah. And I'm a nerd. Sorry, I'm not a nerd. I'm an idiot. So I worry about all the other idiots.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you're worried about your like your self-interest, or like interest.
Look, I'm fine. I mean, I've got a multi-sig, I've got single sigs. Like
sure,
I know what I'm doing, but I do worry like long term. It's this educational piece where there was a time where post Mt. Gox, it was not your keys, not your Bitcoin, not your keys, not your Bitcoin.
That makes sense.
But that's going to have to evolve because it's going to be a case of some people. It feels like there's competing forces of an acceptance that not everyone will be sovereign. Or no, be patient. We can build the tech to do this. And this is why I'm interested in covenants, because my understanding is potentially the idea of shared UTXOs would enable more people to be, but I still don't understand it.
I think you run into the same. I mean, Lightning is like shared UTXO technology.
Yes.
Right. And like, I think one of the things about Lightning that isn't really well understood or talked about a lot is Lightning is the first covenant contract to get shipped on Bitcoin.
Okay.
I would say, or like the widest used one in terms of like we're sharing UTXOs, we're using covenants to do it. Sure, they're using more expensive covenants to do it. Like the on-chain footprint to actually like unroll them, if that makes sense, is expensive. They're limited in the fact that you can only get 2 people in them, each one at a time in these like contracts, right? So like, yeah, Lightning is like kind of exists to like solve that problem, right? It's like we're going to share UTXOs and we're going to use these like more limited covenant contracts to be able to do that.
Nobody's ever told me that Lightning Network is essentially covenants. Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it's like well understood. And like we had to soft fork in, like when you look through the history of like the Scaling Bitcoin conferences that started, I think in 2015 and ran up to 2019. I think that conference series was really the forum or venue where SegWit and Lightning were like sort of born and socialized, and consensus was reached about that was how Bitcoin was moving into a more scalable future. There were actually 3 soft forks that you needed to get Lightning. One of them was SegWit, which I think is more well-known. The other 2 aren't well-known, but they were to add 2 new opcodes that are essentially the first covenant opcodes in Bitcoin. And they're exactly what we talked about kind of earlier when I was complaining about wallets not being able to do time locks. They're both time lock opcodes, basically. So basically saying you can't spend this Bitcoin until this time, technically, depending on how you look at it, that's a form of a covenant, if that makes sense.
Yeah, interesting. Huh. So I didn't know there were 3 soft forks.
Yeah. And so those all had to happen in order for Lightning to be able to work.
Well, and amongst your peer group, what are the thoughts on scaling at the moment? Where is focus?
That's a really good question. I'm not really sure. Part of me is like, I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, I feel like a lot of people are really focused on, so like there was a lot of like, oh, we can make covenants will lead to this bright, new, beautiful future. And it's like, actually, there's a lot of problems around that in terms of unrolling those things on chain is expensive. And is it actually your Bitcoin if you can't unroll it on chain? If you're stuck in that contract holding a little like IOU sort of situation, in theory, you can get it out on chain, but in practice, you don't have enough Bitcoin to actually like execute it on chain. Is that actually any more self-sovereign than having it locked up in a bank that you can't get the money out because the bank closed down?
So with covenants, but you said that Lightning is actually a 2-person covenant.
It is, yeah.
So, but the covenants, these ones are more multi-person.
That's the idea. So that's one of the evolutions or the ideas is that you can make Lightning more liquid by, and this is like, I really should write more about this, but one of the ideas down is like, so blockchains are global. Everyone has to understand and know where the money is. Lightning is like the complete opposite. Only 2 people have to know where the money is, right? Then you start going, okay, well, 2 people is expensive because then we have to set up all these contracts in order to do these 2 people things. I kind of think of UTXOs as like a contract. To some extent, because it says who can spend the money next.
Okay.
And so Lightning is just a more complicated contract that you have to get 2 people to sign off on in order to move the money to the next place.
Okay.
Really? That's what a 2 of 2 is?
Yeah.
So you have a contract that 2 people have to sign. Then you're saying, okay, well, what if we make a contract where 3 people have to sign, or 5 people have to sign, or 10 people have to sign? And then you start running into, the cool thing about having a contract with 10 people in it is that there's one UTXO that now represents 10 people.
So it's cheaper.
Then one of the problems you run into is, okay, well, we need sign off from all 10 people. Let's say Janet wants to pay Billy inside of that 10 out of 10. But I don't know, Bob is offline. So there's only 9 of the 10 people online. How can these 2 people make a transaction if one of the signatories is missing?
Do you mean as in to close the channel?
No, just to make a payment.
Oh, internally.
Because it's a 10 of 10. So in order to make any payment, you need everyone to sign off on the movement of the money.
How does Fedi solve that? Because say that's 5 of 5 and one goes offline.
Yeah, so this is where they get into that consensus blockchain, and they have a threshold, is my understanding.
Right.
So they kind of had to solve this problem, and they solved it using basically like one of the more up-to-date consensus protocols. It's basically a mini blockchain. This is my joke, is you go from like, okay, 2 of 2 is good, but now we want to add more people. Oh my God, we need blockchains again.
But is that a solution that could be worked on? It's okay to have little mini blockchains.
I mean, I think people are. I think the answer is that's what's happening. Like Liquid exists, like Fedi exists as a project. Like they've got like these little mini blockchains happening.
So yeah, but Liquid is a side chain.
It's a blockchain.
But it's a side chain, like you peg in and peg out of it.
Yeah, but how is that any different from like a Fedi thing?
Yeah, no, I think that's the same. But I'm wondering, I'm spitballing an idea when I'm completely out of my depth.
And that's okay.
Can we wrap a little blockchain into a UTXO?
Yeah, and that's where you start getting into what I think is sort of like the zero knowledge proof-ish stuff.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, we'll like keep the blockchain over here and we can prove that the blockchain did XYZ thing, and we'll just put the proofs back in Bitcoin Core, like back in the Bitcoin blockchain. But all the data will live somewhere else. You start running into this problem of like, where's the data for it? Who needs to know about the data? Who has access to the data to verify that what happened in that chain is exactly correct as you would expect?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like this is like scaling is a hard problem.
Yeah.
It's like a very hard problem. And it's because of this like consensus. Like you come back to consensus, like who needs to be in consensus, who gets to participate in consensus. If you can't participate in consensus like that, like, are you really a self-sovereign member of that particular ecosystem? Like,
yeah. Cause I keep coming back to the idea, you either had to have gone the Roger Ver route, which is keep growing the blockchain, sacrifice decentralization, and more people can have UTXOs. We agree that's a terrible idea.
Yeah, I think so.
And so the better idea is to maintain decentralization, and UTXOs are a privilege. Until somebody solves something in between, I think that's where we're at. And it's like it's shit for people to hear, because essentially it's a 2-tier system. You know, we have the...
Yes.
We have the peasants and the elites, because the elites get the UTXOs and the peasants don't. I'm being facetious. But
yeah, I mean, it does sort of look that shape, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To some extent. I mean, this is the thing. It's like, well, you create your own little blockchain and then you have self-sovereignty on that blockchain. Well, but what is that worth?
Well, that's why in some ways, then I kind of like Liquid, because, okay, I don't have the security of the Bitcoin base chain, but what is there, 17 members of their federation or something?
I don't know.
And I think if you can have those blockchains and the members of those federations are kind of like reputable companies, you know, that you can put a large amount of trust in, or if they don't even know each other. Right. I think that's the potential, but I'm glad I'm not building this.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the stuff I do know about Liquid is that they all communicate over Tor and they're in different jurisdictions, and I don't know how many there are. And sometimes there's like projects where I'm like, I don't think I want to know more information, you know? I'm like, if anyone asks me, I'm like, I literally don't know, you know? Like. So
what do you think is going to happen with Covenants then? Do you think it's parked for a reason?
I think what's going to happen, So after Bitcoin Plus, I think like we got like a new proposal from Rusty called the Great Script Restoration. Have you heard about this?
No, but I know he did it.
Okay. I mean, I can talk about it if you want to hear about it. So I think that's probably my feeling is that has as a proposal, it has a lot of really great things about it that I think are quite attractive for the technologists in the room, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It also has a really great like historical story to it, narrative, which I think is also quite, you know, in terms of like when you're making proposals, if you can say this has like, you know, some historical like weight behind it, I feel like that's always helpful. That'll get us something called OpCat. Anyways, I feel like that's kind of like paving the way towards like maybe we can get other opcodes that do more covenant-y things. What you do with those opcodes and covenant-y things, I start to forget exactly why people wanted them in the first place, honestly. But I know people want them. I feel like what's got a lot of energy and like brain share right now separately from that project, like the covenant stuff, is zero knowledge proof things. So how can we use the Bitcoin blockchain as a place that we put testaments of what's happened elsewhere. And if anyone wants to question what happened elsewhere, you can use the Bitcoin blockchain as the court to kind of arbitrate that. Again, this is something Lightning sort of pioneered, not to, Lightning's cool. It did a lot of cool stuff. But so the idea, and this is, I kind of think like BitVM sort of fits in that category. It's not using the same mechanisms, but it's sort of, it's like the exact mechanism that people are using is like slightly different. And everyone's like trying to figure out different ways that they can do their mechanism. But I feel like exactly what happens on chain is then you have a contract that like people can on chain put up transactions to prove the right or wrong thing happened after the fact, is my understanding.
And so were these the kind of main things that were being discussed at your event?
I think so. I say that. I'm like, I think so. Yeah.
And so you said the conversation shifted before and after.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I think so. This new project by Rusty, what it's got in it is this idea that Satoshi, and I want to say 2012, maybe 2010, had about is it 12 or 14 opcodes that were originally in Bitcoin script, but Satoshi went in and disabled them.
Okay.
And so the idea, it's called the Great Script Restoration Project because Rusty is proposing a way to bring those back. And that's
all of them?
Yes, all of them back.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the extent of the proposal on the face of it, if that makes sense. We had these opcodes, Satoshi took them out because he was afraid that they would their use would give people the opportunity to basically bring down the Bitcoin network by their use. So he didn't know how to make them safe. So rather than spend time, and they were in a bit of a hurry, right? Because they found this bug in Bitcoin, basically. It's very early in the network. They didn't want someone to take the network down maliciously. So they took, or even accidentally. So they took a section of opcodes. They're like, we're not sure how to make these safe. We're just going to say you can't use them. And here we're going to add a couple more restrictions to opcodes just so that when Bitcoin's running and people are making transactions, it's not possible for someone to make a Bitcoin transaction that when it gets sent out to all the nodes basically stop processing.
Right. Okay.
So it's a CPU attack, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. No, I understand.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rusty's like, we can make them safe, and here's how.
So my conversation with Saylor, which has it's been discussed a lot, is that
I see.
He thinks this is a $1.5 trillion network. He thinks every time we make a change is code inflation, which
only
is code
1.5 trillion.
Only for now.
Wow, okay. Lowballing there, Saylor. All right, sorry.
No, that's where we are now. But he says we're there and we're heading to $100 trillion network.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and the network is, it's holding a lot of purchasing power in it. And every time we make a change is potential code inflation, and we don't know sometimes the knock-on effects. So, for example, with Taproot, we got shitcoins and wizards and cats and all that stuff, which some people like, some people dislike.
Sure.
But do we end up bringing something in that risks Bitcoin in a way we don't know? The unknown unknowns.
Right.
Yeah. And so the idea of 14 opcodes coming back may sound scary. And the interesting thing about the Saylor thing is it actually split the crowd. Some people are like, isn't that what we're fucking talking about? And other people are like, no,
that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and it scares me. I mean, Bitcoin does everything I need right now.
Yeah, I guess this is a thing where I'm like, okay, so I think Bitcoin's not holding that $1.5 trillion in value. It's people's private keys, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So people are guarding that money. That money is held by hodlers, like, these UTXO holders that we were talking about earlier, right? By these elites that can afford to hold UTXOs, right?
Yeah.
So that 1.5 trillion isn't in the network. It's in those keys.
Fair.
If that makes sense.
No, it does, yeah.
And so adding an update to the network where you re-enable stuff is really just expanding the number of contracts or ways that people can hold that value and with who they're allowed to hold it. And so what kinds of configurations and like 2 of 2 or 3 of 3 or 2 of 5 or whatever. So you're really just adding the ability to create new contracts that sort of make how that money is held and who's allowed to have it and what conditions a little more expressive. But for all the people that are currently holding that 1.5 trillion value in their keys, it won't impact them. This is the beauty of soft forks, right?
Yes, and that you don't have to upgrade.
You don't have to upgrade. And upgrading only offers more opportunities for, like we were talking earlier about, maybe there's new ways we can experiment to figure out new ways of scaling. But we want to do that in a way where we're not impacting all those people that are existing key holders, right?
Unless you are custodying with somebody else, you're outsourcing the risk.
That's true. Yeah. So if someone else is holding your keys, then I can't make any guarantees what they will do with that Bitcoin if new contracts come out. But I had a tweet thread, I think a while ago, because I was talking to Matt Snow from Triamel a few weeks ago, and he was asking really great questions also about covenant stuff. And one of the questions he asked is like, how do you know that Bitcoin you get doesn't have any of these new fancy covenants on it or whatever? Like, if I get Bitcoin, how do I know that it's self-sovereign Bitcoin? And my answer is simply, if you're able to pick your Bitcoin address from a wallet that you know that's going to keys that you like to your multi-sig 2 of 3, as long as you're able to pick a Bitcoin address and have someone to send Bitcoin to that, you have full guarantees that that money is going somewhere that is in your full control and it's not going to have any funny business. So if someone wants to send you Bitcoin, as long as you have the capability to pick what address it goes to, you have complete assurance that it's going to the contract that you know and understand.
Can someone send you time-locked Bitcoin without telling you and you wouldn't realize until later on that you want to spend it?
I actually think, yes, they could.
Yeah.
Actually, that one is yes, they could. So even today, that's like a risk, right?
Yeah.
That's like a big risk. I'm not exactly, this is like, okay, so now I'm like curious about how wallets show time-locked Bitcoin. Because someone could send you, right, because these time locks exist today, and someone could send you Bitcoin today that you couldn't get to for the next 100 years.
Yeah, because like when I die, I want to send all my Bitcoin to my kids, but I want to time lock it in increments.
Right.
And like for me, that's great. Like you can't have all this at once. You got to earn it and spend your time learning about Bitcoin. Which, by the way, my son is now a hardcore Bitcoiner.
Great.
He's 20 years old.
Oh,
He is
wow.
in.
Oh, that's great.
He went out to Gridless for 3 months. He worked out there.
Oh, that's
and
so
now
cool.
he is in. He's listened to loads of shows. He's learned so
put
much
the work
about it.
in now.
He's put the work in.
Yeah.
He now understands. He doesn't just understand Bitcoin. He now understands the financial world in that, he just bought a car and he knew to take out finance rather than sell his Bitcoin to buy it. He knew that. He's like, I'm going to take out finance and they're going to sell a little bit each month to do it because I think Bitcoin's going up. Like, he's on it. But anyway.
That's cool.
I want them to have it time locked. And in my will, it'll say, this is time locked till then. But, if I wanted to be a shit to somebody and I wanted to pay something, and I send it to a wallet and I time lock it, they might not even find out till whenever. They might even not remember it's me.
Well, they should know when the transaction gets sent, it will say it's time locked.
Where?
It says it in the transaction. There's a field. It's like a form.
But I don't look at that field, do I? Does that Bitcoin just go into...
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Depends on your wallet.
Yeah, that's the thing.
This is the thing, yeah.
Yeah, back to where we started.
Yeah, depends on your wallet.
So I think you need to go back on your rant about wallets, and we need a wallet coalition that agrees to do...
Go. Yeah, standards, good. That's a great idea, actually. Like some sort of like nonprofit accreditation thing, which is like these wallets fit these standards that we have for wallets. And like this is a list of things for user experiences that we believe should exist for wallets, et cetera. And like if your wallet isn't in the standardized list, like we don't, it doesn't have our stamp of approval, et cetera.
That sounds a bit centralizing, but I like it.
I mean, yeah, but it's like, it's like a standards organization, right? It's like, it's funny. It's like Bitcoin, you go through the whole thing of government again, if that makes sense. It's
of course you do.
Yeah, you're like, oh, wait, like now everyone can get like in trouble. Like your wallet doesn't show you the thing. We need a standards body that'll like give it the stamp of approval and we'll all feel nice and safe.
Yeah, and then you'll get the people like, no, we're the anarchist wallet. We don't want the stamp of approval. Yeah,
exactly. Like, we'll never get the stamp of approval, but we promise we're as good, if not better, than the stamp of approval is, or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's
you always end up rebuilding government.
You do. You rebuild the whole thing from scratch because it's like, oh, well, maybe we should have some assurances because we want people to like know that they're getting what they think they're getting.
And how we decide what's in the standards? Well, we need to have a committee. Well, who's going to lead the committee? Well, we have a leader.
Benevolent dictator,
we have a president.
I think is there you go.
We have a president of the Bitcoin Wallet Council.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. Right. Is there anything we've not covered that you would want to cover?
Next Bitcoin Plus is in Berlin.
Okay, cool.
In
when
October,
is that?
10th to 12th.
10th to 12th.
Yeah. It's going to be covering ecash. Still looking, I got to figure out exactly where we're going to be still. So I'm working on that next month. But I'm so excited because it's the first Bitcoin conference Bitcoin Plus conference where I've done like, I think, depends on how big a venue we get. But currently, I think we've already sold like 25% of tickets already claimed, which is very exciting for...
I'm at a wedding.
Oh, well...
In America.
Oh, well... That sounds like a conflict. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't go. But I tell you what, we will do if you want. I think I did. I've either offered you it to before, or we've done it before. But like, if you want us just like to shout some stuff out in the pod for it,
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
Just ping Danny, and we'll just shout out about it.
Okay, great. Yeah, that'd be super great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you make money in your conferences?
It depends.
Because that was my experience. It was debt. 2 weeks ago, we've broken even.
Yeah. Oh my God, they're so stressful.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I really feel like running a conference. I've done 6 of them. This is going to be my 7th. Every conference, I really feel like is an act of faith. You just have to start skating towards the goal. And you're like, maybe the money will come. Maybe the people will come.
I have this spreadsheet, which is like, here are my costs.
Yeah.
And it's a minus. And then every day when we sell tickets, I just put those in, and it's like, I'm chipping away at it. But like say with our Bedford, we had no idea.
Yeah.
There were times we were like, yeah, we're going to lose like 100 grand here.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to lose 50 grand. Okay, we're going to break even. Oh, we made a bit of money.
Yeah.
Let's give it away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a total act of faith. And you're like, okay, I might be in the hole. I might not be. Maybe not. I don't know.
What are you going to bring it to the UK at some point? Please bring it to the UK.
Sure.
Yeah, excellent. Right, bring it to the UK. Okay, so 10th to 12th of October, people go to that.
Yeah, it should be super fun.
What's the web address?
It's btcpp.dev.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it should be good. I'm very excited. I'm very excited about this conference. We have Fetty's on board already. Callie from Cashew's on board.
I love Callie.
Yeah, there's a good cohort of people from Fetty who are from Germany as well.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. I'm excited. Yeah.
And Base 58, do you want to pimp that?
I should. I feel like I don't have anything. So the only thing that I've got currently on Base 58, I need to get more online stuff, but I've been saying that for the last 5 months. Currently, if you're a developer and you want to get into Bitcoin and you're looking for a good place to start, maybe you've read Mastering Bitcoin, but you want to get your hands on, actually do some implementation work around how Bitcoin works. Base 58 has 2 online classes. They're on Udemy. I call them Developer Basics 1 and 2. The second one I just put out in January, and I'm really excited about it because I think it's one of the best explanations of how elliptic curves work in Bitcoin. So here's how the crypto math behind what keeps your Bitcoin safe works.
Okay.
Here's the actual document where like all this stuff comes through. And then we walk through actually implementing by hand in Python for ourselves all of the code that you need to make signatures for Bitcoin, sign Bitcoin transactions. So you can pick your own private key, lock Bitcoin up to it. And then with your own code that you've written, you can create a transaction that spends it. So you can make your own signatures basically from, I don't know, it's fun.
I would be scared of me doing that, but
you can do it. I mean, try it. I don't know.
I think I'd blow Danny's mind if I did that.
But this is a really fun thing I feel like about doing technical education kind of at like the transaction level is I feel like, yeah, it's hard and it's complicated. But I really do think more people can understand it than they think, if that makes sense.
This is how much, I'm just going to give you a little story about how much of an idiot I am, right? So I've got my Mutiny wallet and I've got my balance in there and I'm trying to send it via Zaprai into my Unchained Vault, okay?
That just sounds more complicated than this class, I promise already. Like the setup.
No. This is all I'm doing is click and pay on Zaprai, creating the invoice, and then I'm paying it. And so what happens is with Zaprai, it says, do you want to pay this in Bitcoin, Lightning, or card? I think, well, my Mutiny wallet's Lightning, so I want to pay it in Lightning.
Yeah.
But Zaprai is used to filter either to my Vault or to my Lightning wallet.
I see.
And so anyway, I pay myself, and then so the 1.7 million sats goes, and I look at my wallet, it says send, and my balance hasn't changed. And I'm like, Tony, your wallet's broken.
Yeah.
What's going on here? And so got me the log. So basically, I was sending it back to myself.
Oh.
Because I was choosing to pay in Lightning, and my Zaprai kept my Lightning. So I kept paying myself.
Oh.
This is how bad I am, Lisa.
Oh.
I am terrible.
But I think that would have also, I'm a little bit more of a ditz than I think most people. I mean, very smart, but like,
come on, you run out of Lightning though. Do you know what
that's true.
You've coded stuff.
It's true, yeah. Yeah, I have shipped some code, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, you forget how the things are wired up sometimes. It's fine. There's one more thing I wanted to show. I remember for Base 58, we're doing this project called the Bitcoin Live Action Roleplay, or LARP. It's super fun. It's great for people of like all ages and all kind of levels of where they are in their Bitcoin career or life or experience. It's like a 2-hour in-person live action like game. It's like a group effort. So you get your team and you're competing against other teams to make Bitcoin blocks and transactions and send them around the network. But
that is cool.
It's all in person. It's with paper and pen. We're doing it here in town on Saturday at Bitcoin Commons from
What time?
12:30 to 2:30, I think, or 12 to 2:30. So kind of around lunch.
What time do we fly?
Might have to move your flight, so you guys should come hang out.
I can't move my flight and go to Oslo.
I
But I
see.
think it might be an 8 p.m. flight.
I'm also leaving late that evening to go to
Yeah.
Oslo. So
Oh, are you?
if you're in town,
Hold on, are you on the same flight as me?
probably, yeah.
You going via London?
I don't. Yes. No, I don't. I haven't looked at my ticket.
And that would be Doctor. Oh, yeah, so I'm literally flying that night.
Yeah, I'm flying out that night also.
Yeah,
So we
okay.
kind of scheduled it so we could go. I'm probably going straight to the airport from there.
Put it in our diaries.
Yeah.
6 p.m.
I
flight.
think mine's at 6, yeah. So we end at 2:30, and then I think if you leave by
3 hours.
three,
and then
that's more
flight.
than enough, yeah.
We'll be hanging out in Oslo.
Yeah.
So we'll be hanging out in
Oh,
Heathrow
we'll be doing
Airport.
it in Oslo too.
Okay.
So if you miss it here, I'll be doing one in Oslo.
Yeah,
also.
we're doing an interview Saturday morning, so I'm not sure if we can, but either way.
Yeah, but you should. It's really fun. It's great. We're also doing our big launch in Nashville. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, but
No, that's fine. Keep going.
yeah, we're also doing it. We're hoping to do a big launch in Nashville. So one of the projects is I got OpenSats grant to help train 21 people on how LARPs work, and we distributed LARP kits so people can run them by themselves. So we're trying to scale up all the people that are running LARPs so people can actually
It's just funny they're called LARPs.
figure out. I know, it's great. It's like memorable. I don't know.
Well, Lisa, you're brilliant, and it's,
thanks.
I'm so glad we finally got you on the show. I thought we had before, but see, it was a different thing we did. But thank you. And listen, look, anything we can do to help, just reach out to me and Danny. If you want us to pimp your event, we'll do it. We'll help
Great.
you. I know what it's like doing an event, so if we can help
Yeah.
help push some more people to it and
That'd
maybe
be
sell some
great,
more
yeah.
tickets, that'll be great. And Berlin, I mean, you've been to Berlin, right?
Yeah.
It's an awesome place.
It's our second year in Berlin.
It's an awesome place.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And I'm excited. Man, this is one thing I love about running events is like, I love bringing people, Bitcoiners, especially the devs, to new places where they get to make new friends. This is like one of the reasons I do it. And we go all over the world is because Bitcoin devs get to come maybe out of their shell. And maybe they wouldn't have really thought to come to Berlin and meet all of the Bitcoin devs there. But hopefully they'll come because there's a Bitcoin Plus Plus conference and they'll meet everyone. And now like we'll just have like this tighter network of like devs and technical people working on projects. If they have questions or need help, they like have personal relationships, which only makes Bitcoin better.
No, I feel exactly the same. I mean, the cool thing about our event in Bedford, it was 540 people, I think, in the end,
Wow.
including speakers.
Amazing.
And they all came to my town, little Bedford. We sold every hotel room, but like I said, put your hand up if this is your first Bitcoin conference. It must have been 75% of the people in the room.
Incredible.
Yeah, incredible.
Wow.
It was mind blowing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it was mind blowing because most people don't get on a flight and go to Nashville to a conference because
Yeah.
that's the cost of a holiday.
It is.
And also, if you turn around to if you're in a relationship, say to your wife, I'm going to spend $4,000 going to this, and hold up, no, you're not. And it's like you're not going to take your. I mean, some take their family. We had
people
we
take
had,
their
we had about 30 kids at ours, and it was great.
Oh, that's great.
I think these conferences are great. I mean, the conferences are great, but it's the hanging out as well. That's the bit. That's the best bit. So, well, look, if we can help in any way, just ping us and
Yeah.
keep doing your thing.
Great. Hope to.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
See you later, everyone. Bye.